Today I want to do something interesting. I want to try to create try-catch style exception handling in C. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I want to show you how to do something that a lot of programmers, especially new programmers, don't think is possible. Specifically, that is try-catch style exception handling in C. I mean, when we talk about C and we talk about its limitations, that's one of the big ones, right? No classes, no exceptions, no STL, but not anymore. Today I want to show you how to pull off this style of error handling using two functions, Setjump and Longjump in C. And as always, source code is available through Patreon, so let's get into it. Okay, so today we're gonna start with a simple program. It has main and one other function. It takes a bunch of doubles from the argument list and basically reads them into an array. Then it has a function that computes the average of those values, so that's up here. Pretty straightforward. It's gonna take the array of values in and its length. It's going to go through, I have a for loop here that's going to go through and compute the average of the values. So it's going to add them all up and then divide by the length, and then it returns that average. And then we're printing out the average right here. And I also have a simple makefile here. This looks like just about any other makefile that I've made in any of my other videos. I'll link below to my other make videos in the description if you want to reference those, just if you feel like you need a refresher. Now, if we come into the terminal, you'll notice that this works fine. I can run my example program with a few numbers. You can see that it computes the average and prints it out just fine. We'll try it with another set of numbers just to make sure that we didn't just get lucky. But one thing you will notice about this current program is if I run it without any arguments, then you get this not a number thing. And let's just say that's not what I want today. Let's say that I want to print out some sort of error message if the array has length 0. Okay, so let's go back into our example. Now, of course, we could catch this up front, right? I could have an error message here that just says something like, if length is less than or equal to 0, and I could handle the error there. And I could also check after the fact and check whether or not what compute average returned was not a number. But what if I don't want to explicitly check return values? What if I wanted instead to throw an exception? So if we were using C++ or Java or Ruby or Python or just about any other language out there that's not C, we could simply put this in some kind of try-catch block like this. And then if we had a problem in the function, we could just throw an exception and we could then print out the error out here in main. And C doesn't have this functionality built into the language. And of course, we can debate about whether or not one error handling style is more or less convenient or more efficient or more readable than the other. It really is going to depend on the program and programmer taste. But my question for today is not should we use exception handling, but rather can we use exception handling here without switching to a different language? And of course, the answer is we can, otherwise I wouldn't have made this video. So to do this today, we're going to use two functions, Setjump and Longjump, and they're going to help get us there. So let's look at how this works. So the first thing I'm going to do is jump up here to the top and include a header file, of course. Okay, now the idea with Setjump is that it saves the program's computing context. So it's like taking a snapshot of the program, or at least a snapshot of where it's currently executing, and it saves that context specifically so that we can later jump back to that spot in the program using Longjump. Now, one thing we are going to need is a variable that's going to save that context. So I'm going to declare that up here. We'll call it save buff. So this jump buff type is just a type that's declared for this purpose for Setjump to use. And I'm making it a global variable because it needs to exist across different function calls. Okay, so now let's go back down in main and let's use Setjump. So what I'm gonna do here is we're gonna call Setjump and we're gonna pass in our save buff in there. And we're gonna check to see if it returns 0. And then if it does return 0, we are going to run this code down here. Now, Setjump is a little weird, and I want to make sure you understand it before we go too much further. When we call it, it's going to initially return 0. It's saving state, but it's initially going to return 0. So this code, the code here inside the if statement, is always going to run. So this if block is going to act like my try block. Okay, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But first, let's go up to our function and add an exception. Okay, so if we come up here, basically what we're gonna do, let's say right at the beginning, we just check to see if our length is less than or equal to 0. And if it is, what I'm gonna do is call Longjump with our save buff and 1. We'll just go with 1 for now. Doesn't have to be 1, but we'll go with 1. So now what this is going to do is when this is called, when longjump is called, it's going to jump back down in the program, down here, where we called setjump. It's going to come down to this point, and it's going to cause setjump to return again. That's the really weird part, is setjump is actually going to return again, but this time setjump is going to return a 1 instead of a 0 because we passed in a 1 right here. So what that means is jump back to setjump and return a 1 instead of a 0. So if this happens down here, we are going to then return from setjump, but it's not going to return 0 anymore, so we won't go into this block, so we basically skip over this block. And now if we compile our example and we run it, okay, so you can see this still works, but if we run it here, you notice now we get no output. We don't get that not a number, which is, I guess, a step in the right direction. It's not really what we wanted. We wanted to actually handle the error and print out some error message. And so instead what we'll do is let's just come down here and we'll make an else block here. This will act like a catch block. And then I can say error invalid input. And don't forget the semicolon. And then if we come down here and we try to run it, now you notice that we get this catch style behavior. So basically it tries to compute the average, it can't, and it jumps back. And so this is basically how try catch blocks work. So that's pretty cool. Now you're probably thinking, like, what are the limitations of this? For example, like, can we nest these kinds of try catch blocks? And we would just need to have different save buffs. For every time we nest one, we would need a different variable, so we save the state in a different location so they don't save on top of each other. But some of you purists out there might also be saying, yeah, this behaves like a try-catch block, but it's not as pretty. It's definitely not as readable. It's not as easy to understand as a try-catch block would be in another language that actually has try-catch blocks built in. So since the theme of this video is, can we do it? Let's see if we can use the preprocessor to try to make our syntax look more like a try-catch block. And we'll do that with some defines up here. Now, just to be clear, folks, you want to be very careful and think twice before doing any kind of complicated preprocessor hackery. It can definitely get you into some problems, some really weird situations that may be difficult to debug. And that actually seems like something we should talk about in a future video. But again, today I'm just interested in what can be done, not what should be done. I mean, I'm just having fun today. So I'll let you decide whether or not this is a good idea for your software. But for right now, I want to see what we can do. So what I'm going to do is up here, let's just pound define try. And we'll just make it equal to if setjump save buff equals 0. So I'm just going to say anytime I type try, it's going to look like this. So I can come down here and replace this code with try. So that's looking more like a try catch block. Now we come back up here and we'll say, let's define, I'm going to say catch all and just define that to be else. Okay, since this is just going to catch anything that we throw. So now I can do something like that, right? Pretty straightforward. We didn't really change anything and we still get the same behavior. Now it looks like a try-catch block, so that's a little nicer. But what if we also wanted to be able to throw different kinds of things and catch different kinds of things? Because that's something that you get in other languages. And so for this, I'm not gonna give a perfect solution, but let me just give you an idea of where you could go with this. If I wanted to be able to throw different things, in this case, let's just say we're throwing integers because that's simple. We could get more complicated, but let's just define another global variable up here. I'm going to call it exception value, and it's going to start out as 0. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change up my try block just a little bit. And what we're going to do is set exception value to setjump here. So basically what this is going to do is this is going to remember what returned from setjump. Okay. If it's equal to 0, we're still doing what we're doing. But now I can come in here and let's make another catch. And this one's going to catch a particular number. So now if we see this, do an else block just like we had before, but this time we're going to add an if here. And we're just going to check to see if our exception value is num. Okay, so that's going to be great. And I also forgot, we're still doing longjump up here. We don't have a throw. So let's pound define a throw as well, and we'll throw a particular number. And in this case, whenever we see this, we will just say save buff and throw the number. Okay, so these are just basically going to allow me to change some syntax here. So instead of here, we will just go throw 1. right? So now we're throwing the integer 1, really we're just saving it and we're jumping back. And then down here, let's make another catch. And let's say let's catch 5. And we'll say I got error number 5. Okay, and just to test out this, because currently we're not ever throwing a 5, let's come up here and just say, if we get all the way through, we're going to throw 5. Like I'll remove this later on, but let's just say that's what we wanted to do. And so now if we run this, you notice we get our generic catch all our invalid inputs, but then say I came up here and ran it with results. Now I'm getting, I caught error 5 because that's what we threw. So if I throw a 5, it's going to fall into that first catch block, but anything else that I throw is going to fall into the last one. And so this isn't a perfect solution, but it's kind of cool. I just wanted to show you that you can do this. Basically, you can create try-catch blocks in C if you're willing to do a little bit of preprocessor hackery and use Setjump and Longjump. I hope this is helpful. I hope it expands your mind, gives you some ideas about what is possible in your programming. Let me know down in the comments if you find this useful, how you put it to good use. And of course, if you have extensions, improvements, or things that you think I should have done better, drop this video a like if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you want to make sure you don't miss the next one, which should be out next Tuesday. I'm trying to get these out weekly these days. And until the next video, I'll see you all later.